We will start the meeting with an invocation and pledge of allegiance. So Commissioner Walker will provide the invocation for us.
Heavenly Father, guide our hearts and minds in spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech tonight. Thank you for being our source of guidance. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So, Ms. Sweet Dobbs, could you please call the roll for us?
Yes, sir. Bill Lamond,
Here.
Janice Davis, LaDonte Walker,
Here.
Bill Vowell,
Here.
Garrett Collier,
Present.
Brian Gerke,
Present.
Punisa Sharma,
Present.
Ashley Campbell,
Here.
Rick Ramick,
Here.
and Bart Stafford.
Here. Okay, so may I have a motion and a second for approval of last month's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. So may I have a motion and a second for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So the first part of our agenda this evening is old business. Director Selman, could you please introduce the item?
Yes, thank you. The item is mysteriously not there. Here we go. Okay, this is OA 24-141, an ordinance amendment to require that all manufactured homes placed within the city of Hot Springs after the effective date of this ordinance shall have been manufactured after March 15, 2021, the same being the effective date of the HUD manufactured home construction and safety standards.
Okay. We've already had a discussion about this in our last monthly meeting, and there were some open issues. Looks like we have one person signed up to address the commission, J.D. Harper. Could you please come forward and give us your name and address? And you have 3 minutes. I know that's hard to do, but
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Selman. I thought there might be a little bit more introduction on the item you have in front of you because it's an alternate proposal from what I spoke on in September. Is that correct?
It is with regard to dates.
Yes. So it's an amended proposal. Last September when I was here, I spoke to you about the proposal that was going to require this or to put this into action here in the city. And there was some concern from the industry and for people who operate businesses in town about used pre-owned manufactured homes not being able to be placed in parks and not being able to be placed in the overlays. You've got a lot of comment in your packet that came from some national organizations and from us. Since then, we've seen the alternate proposal. I've reached out to those national organizations and I've submitted another comment letter as of today that talks about the alternate proposal. So is that the one we're going to talk about, or are we talking about the previous proposal?
Yes, if you'd like, I can read what that proposal is so that you're clear on
If
that.
everybody's familiar with it, ma'am, I mean,
Well,
that's fine.
let's just say that this is an ordinance requiring that effective January 1st, 2027, all manufactured homes placed within the city shall have been manufactured after March 17, 2025, that being the effective date of HUD manufactured home construction and safety standards, with the exception that manufactured home parks approved prior to the ordinance's approval date, and that homes lawfully placed on individual lots prior to the ordinance's approval date may continue to use the October 25th, 1994 date of manufacture for replacement manufactured dwellings on the same site.
All right, with that being the alternate proposal, the questions that were posed by the commenters, I put them all in this letter that's current today. The question was, do you want to adopt a standard and put it in your ordinance before it's been acted on by the enabling body? The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development is reviewing current standards, and yes, they published a Federal Register notice that intended to make these new changes in March of 2025. But you can expect on January 20th, with the presidential change, there will be an executive order to halt all rulemaking until the new administration has an opportunity to review those changes and put their own earmarks on those. So the March 2025 date may or may not be hit by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So a very good likelihood that you'll have to come back and amend that date in your ordinance. But I've seen that it doesn't go into effect until 2027, so you would have time to do that. But it would be prudent, I guess, to wait till that is done, and then you can move forward at that time. The second part of that is the actual language of the ordinance proposal says it would permit units on those spots where previously existing manufactured homes were. The question that was posed is that sites that are vacant at the time of this adoption of this ordinance, or lots where homes are torn down, site-built homes, and a manufactured home did not exist there, particularly in the overlay districts, would they or would they not be able to place a previously owned home on that site? Under a strict reading, the attorney is saying no. I know there could be other interpretations, but the question is, does it need to be made clearer? And that was the question that was posed by legal counsel. So we think this is a great step in the right direction because it did acknowledge the difference between the new homes and the used homes. And it does allow for folks who live in parks and they're going to place homes on the sites that are in these overlay districts that are, in a lot of cases, in not the best parts of town, lower property values. They're going to be folks that have less means to buy a home. So they're going to be buying a home that's probably a used unit. We think it's a step in the right direction. We would encourage you, as you look at your overall housing strategy over the next year, to look at manufactured housing, to look at modular housing, to look at other units. We talked at the September meeting about these changes that are coming. They're going to even talk about things like duplexes and quadplexes that are going to be manufactured units. So there are going to be some other uses that you're going to see in the future that manufactured housing may even be a better tool for you in the city of Hot Springs to provide affordable housing. So as this thing grows and as these ordinances change and these rules change, it might be prudent for the city to look at that as they move forward with their housing strategy. So at this time, we would ask that you take the next year, let these things become effective, take this year when you're looking at your housing strategy, and let us work with you in any way possible to incorporate manufactured housing into your city in a regulated manner. So I hope that's not more than 3 minutes. I know we did a lot the last time, and I intended to be here tonight before I saw the ordinance had been changed. I intended to be here just to answer questions about the comments that we had made, but we've come back and given you a condensed version of those comments based on the new proposal. And I'd like to thank the director and the city attorney for speaking with me on it last week. So,
I actually have a few questions or comments, and I don't know if any of the other commissioners do, but I spent a fair amount of time reading the material that was submitted, and I found some of it to be, quite honestly, unnecessary. And it's almost as if someone looked in their toolbox and said, let me just pull out everything and throw it and see what sticks on the wall. There are references to the Fair Housing Act, which what we're talking about doing has nothing to do with the Fair Housing Act. Mm-hmm. They're just there's a lot of information here that I struggle to find the useful point of. The Department of Housing and Urban Development policy statement that was referenced pointed out some interesting things, but it didn't point out that in statement or in section 4, Roman numeral 4, it says, generally, the adoption and enforcement of a local zoning ordinance regulating the location of manufactured homes has not been subject to the regulatory authority of the Act because such actions are exercises of the locality's authority to determine proper land use. I guess, I mean, you talked about being a partner with us and getting something done here.
Yes, sir.
I just want to comment and say, please understand, the commission has had some really good discussions about trying to solve some of these problems.
Yes, sir.
But they're not going to be solved if we're throwing rocks at each other.
Understood.
So I'm asking that you please, in the future, I mean, there's a boilerplate letter here that you can tell somebody pulled out and changed the address and sent it to us. It just doesn't seem to be helpful in the spirit of partnership.
Those were offered by other entities. I hope that the letter that I attached was more direct and more related to not only Arkansas law, but to how federal law has worked with us and how we've worked with other cities to provide answers for these problems in the past. The fair housing issue was from an attorney who is a fair housing attorney. Yes, absolutely. The national organizations that we're part of, they don't represent us. We're a member of their organizations, but they don't dictate policy to us. So we got in on this discussion way late in the game. I know y'all been working on Code Forward for a long time. You passed on the overlay districts at your last meeting into Code Forward, so it's going to still be around. So I hope that from the position that I've come from, that we have tried to be a partner and we've offered our help and tried to say there are other ways to do what you're trying to do. And if it's been misconstrued as being us being the bad actor or the folks that are trying to be heavy-handed, I apologize for that. I thought my comments stood on their own.
Well, I appreciate your letter, and it was directly relevant to what we're discussing.
Yes,
so I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we are really, incredibly enough, our objectives align in
Yes, sir.
in several ways in what we're talking about doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to provide affordable housing in a fair way in this city, and also that it's safe and habitable and will remain that way. One of the things that I looked at when I was reading through all this was the references to the older homes still being government approved, but then there's also this thing about maintenance. If the home is maintained, blah, 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 blah. That's a big one. And what I haven't seen yet is how many people are doing the appropriate maintenance? How many manufacturers are chasing down owners of their homes from any era in order to ensure that the appropriate maintenance is being done so that they stay safe?
Sure.
And that they are habitable homes that are good for our citizens.
And that was part of the recommendation we made with respect to what other cities had done on used homes. And I think your director has boiled it down to basically saying your property maintenance code should be used to handle those issues once the home is sited here. And we don't have any problem with that. And we encourage, and I think I made the reference last time that if somebody was going to bring a home here, we'd have to know that that was going to meet the checklist, the guidelines, that whatever you adopted or enacted like other cities have done. And if someone brings a house here and doesn't do the maintenance or doesn't bring it into compliance where it has doors and windows and everything that it needs to have, you don't have to issue a certificate of occupancy or turn their water on, and you can start fining them immediately and say, move that house out of our town. So we support all of that. The biggest issue was that the original proposal was going to penalize the folks that could least afford it. They couldn't afford to go out and buy a brand-new home and put it on a small lot in a park or in an overlay.
I know that you know this, so I'm not saying this at you directly, but I know you understand we are not trying to change the manufacturing standards of the
Correct.
home. That keeps coming up in all this stuff too. Can we
It's-
please, as we go forward, just agree to stick to the relevant facts of what is going to help us as a commission to do the right thing for the citizens of Hot Springs?
Sounds like it'll be me working more closely with the city than anyone else. So I think that might help.
Maybe so.
Let's hope
And
so.
again, I look forward to hearing what recommendations you guys might have, because frankly, I mean, we took a certain direction in the commission to say, we're going to have a study to really try to understand and take appropriate action
Yes, sir.
about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing. So we could have just completely left everything alone. But we made a commitment, we're not just going to do that.
Sure.
So in that respect, that aligns with your objectives as well.
Absolutely.
And so
Yes, sir.
let's work together that way.
I agree, and Director Selman shared with me some data from the last 3 years,
Yes.
and it appears that there are very few manufactured homes moving into the city, 10, 12, 13, maybe a year, and out of those, the majority were units that were being moved into parks. There were maybe a couple going on to overlays each year. So it's not like, oh my goodness, the trailers are coming, the trailers are coming. That's not the rallying cry.
Well, interestingly enough, we've just had a political candidate for board director who said exactly that in order to instill fear in our
Oh.
community. So these things do have an impact
Oh,
in
sure.
a lot of different ways. So I'm just hoping that we can get your good recommendations and not just from your organizations, but others, the community,
Sure.
the stakeholders in the city, and come up with a good plan, hopefully one that will continue to extend the olive branch, I
Sure.
think, that is there now.
That's what we're hoping. That's what I'm hoping, let's say. That's what our organization based in Arkansas is hoping, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a real issue with this thing. And that is, if I interpret this right, the Rick Ramick LLC could have a mobile home park, and it can be sold to somebody else as the Rick Raymond LLC. And according to this, these old mobile homes can go into that park for the next 150 years. There's no limit, there's no sunset on it. Now, let's talk, you look at all these letters y'all have written, there's not a letter that I've read that said anything about the fire hazard in these things. You get a fire in a mobile home, you're twice as likely to die in that mobile home as you are in traditional housing. But we're going to allow for the next 150 years to continue to put a mobile home that conforms to 1974 standards.
Well, 94.
94, it's not going to make any difference in 100 years.
30 years.
That's a bunch of crap. We have an obligation, this commission, to provide safety and soundness to this city. There needs to be a sunset clause. There needs to be something included in this. You can do what you want to for 5 years, but after 5 years, it's time to come into conformity. Instead of for 100 years, you can continue to put a 1994 mobile home on that place.
Commissioner Val, I have to say, I agree with a lot of what you've said. The good news is that we are not at a place just yet where we are, well, I guess we really are, if we're in a position to where we could either approve this, this amended proposal or not. Those are our choices. And I think I understand where you're coming from on that, and
Probably know how I'm going to vote on this one.
so, I mean, I don't know. I've been taking up too much time. Do any other commissioners have a?
question.
Yeah.
Mr. Harper,
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt, just as a point of order, have we moved from the speaker session and closed that and moved into the commission discussion? And then
Good point.
perhaps we would allow Mr. Harper to go ahead and take a seat. We can call him back if we need it.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you. Go
good
ahead,
point.
Rick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please feel free to. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, the question I have, Mr. Harper, is
No, you can take a seat. We're just, this is
Oh,
a
Well,
commissioner
He had a
discussion.
question. He has a question for
Yeah.
Mr. Harper.
Okay.
Oh, did you? Okay, I'm sorry about that. I misunderstood you, Rick.
yeah, Mr. Harper, just exactly what are you asking from us tonight?
The letter that I sent today
Yes, sir.
asked that you not act on this proposal tonight, but continue to study as you work on your housing strategy that's proposed over the next year and determine the best uses for manufactured housing. Again, I got involved with this in September, and it was like, you've got 3 minutes to make your case, and it was, the house was on fire. But now we see a different proposal, and we've made some other recommendations. To be honest with you, Mr. Val, I don't think the 94 date ought to be in there. That was a date that was arrived upon back in the early 2000s when you had a 10-year limit. Home couldn't be any older than 10 years and be brought in. Once it's in, it's in. So you can't say you can only live in it for 5 years and then you got to move out. You don't do that on anything else in town, apartments, duplexes, site-built housing, anything else. So that being said, back to the date and time, what we suggested was that you have people make application to the city and say, we have this unit that we want to bring and put in a mobile home park or on an individual site. And here's the information about the unit and here's the condition that it's in. And the department the director has discussed the problems that would cause for the department and for her folks, her inspectors, because they're not trained to inspect to the HUD standards to which the houses are built. They're trained in International Residential Code. So what we've seen happen in other towns is that new houses, new and previously unoccupied, you come in and get a permit, you place them. If it's a used unit, previously occupied unit, you have to provide some additional assurance to the city. And there is a checklist of things these things are going to be done. These things are going to be present. It's not exhaustive, it's not all inclusive, but they would have to, it'd be on the applicant to provide either photographs or video of the house to say, this is what we're bringing, and this is, your park owner would have to bring that into the city and say, this is the way the unit looks. And it's going to meet all these requirements. If they bring it in, your inspector goes to the park and it doesn't have windows, it doesn't meet the standards. It's got to be moved.
So do we have those, the city, do we have those regulations
We,
for our inspectors?
I'd be happy to answer that question.
Okay.
As the letters have said over and over again, we cannot establish standards for the construction of manufactured housing. HUD is occupying that space. To adequately inspect a house that was not inspected by the city as it was constructed, which would be the case with a manufactured home, would require what is called a destructive inspection to see what is behind the walls, to see what the plumbing looks like, to see that Cousin Randy didn't come in and make improvements to those systems. We have no way of doing that. And the checklist that you mentioned, I did some calling around, and many of the communities who have adopted those standards do not actually use them because it isn't accomplishing much of anything. They just give the permit and the home moves in. So in terms of establishing whether a home is safe to occupy when it's been done, as Mr. Harper pointed out, under another standard, and then those systems are covered up, we are not going to take that on. That is a liability that is excessive. To expect someone to come in after a home has been built many years, in some cases before, and to say yes it is, or no it isn't safe, we're not about to do that. And that may be working for some communities, but it is not going to work in Hot Springs. And again, we have somewhere between 10 and 13 homes a year coming in. Some are used, some are new.
Who actually inspects those?
HUD. The manufacturer works to the HUD standard. If HUD accepts the work, they slap a label on. That label is supposed to stay on that home forever. If a home comes to Hot Springs and there is no label on it, we do not allow them.
You don't have to accept it.
We don't.
And the
we do not.
inspection is actually done in the plants when the houses are being built by a third-party inspector that is certified with HUD. They're not employed by the factory. So they check the units as they're going through the process at stages of construction to make sure that the electrical is done to the HUD standards, that the plumbing is done, that the HVAC is done. So when it rolls off the line, it has the label affixed that says when this home was produced, it met or exceeded the standards that HUD has set for them. And that will be the case for every new home built. So since 2021, when the last round of changes happened, all the homes that have been built since then meet that standard. And the same will be true next year whenever the administration allows these other changes to be made, that every home built after that date will meet those standards or exceed them.
But
I'm sorry.
I will say, though, if you, excuse me for just interrupting there, that this is where maintenance comes into play.
Absolutely.
Because when a home gets that stamp, that plate that says, okay, it's been inspected, it's good by HUD, at that point, then, for example, if the safety standard changed from you need 2 screws in this place to now you need 4 screws in this place, in order to be safe, who's checking that for those homes that, got their plate before that pronouncement was made? And that's where I'm concerned about the complete untraceability of maintenance. It's almost silly to say maintenance on some of these homes.
It is very similar to existing units you have in your town that were built to the National Electric Code 25 years ago. Those units aren't going to be updated unless there's a certain amount of construction or renovation that goes on, correct? You're not going to go to a homeowner's door and knock on it and say, hey, you're out of compliance. We need to rewire your house. It's going to be in the event that there are changes. If there's a remodel, if there's a fire, something happens when it gets renovated, you bring it up to code, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, so it's the same with these units. If they've been in one mobile home park on one side of town and they move to the other side of town, they still met the same standards they were built to over there when you move it over here. It doesn't change the fact that the unit isn't changing. It's the location is changing. It was still approved at the time to be safe under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's construction and safety standards. They've changed a lot.
Yeah.
And Mr. Val, 1994 was the biggest changes in fire safety in the history of HUD standards. So it took it, in the old days, in the 70s, they were using aluminum wiring. They're not doing that anymore. They haven't in years. So there have been major changes to the product over my time with this industry, and they're evolving more and more exponentially each year. So
Sounds to me like all the more reason then to put updated homes on these places
If-
instead of 20-year-old homes.
we'd love it if everybody could afford a new house. We would love it, but everybody can't.
As a representative of the industry, would you be opposed to us saying the home can't go on the existing lot if it's older than 10 years?
I think you'll find that when you set an arbitrary date, I think that's where you ended up in court last time around.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, the reason that 1994 is the date is that because that was the year that HUD implemented enhanced fire safety methods in construction. And that is why in this proposal, we are looking at a date that reflects adoption of new standards. I mean, the standards are varied. They cover a lot of different things. One of them would be the width of a doorway, and can it be obstructed by some little thing that would prevent a first responder from effectively entering a unit, should there be a need for someone to come in and be aided. These are things that we have been told by our city attorney is the way we need to guide our regulation, that it needs to go back to an objective standard that changed, that made something more safe on that date. So in this case, we're looking at adopting standards that have been published that are not final. You're absolutely right. But we aren't building the units. We don't need to have the final rule. We know that these are standards that will assist us in providing assurance to the people who live in Hot Springs that if they bring a home into Hot Springs, that they and their neighbors will have an enhanced level of safety because of the rules that were used to construct the home. And that's what we're looking for. So we can't really pick a 10-year, which would float along, and some years it would make a difference and some years it wouldn't. There was litigation, and Mr. Harper would know about that. That's how we ended up with 1994. So in looking at the HUD manufactured housing site over a period of years, it appears that now we have a new standard that is worthwhile adopting for the people in Hot Springs. And that's why we're looking at this. We're not looking at it because we don't like the way houses looked in 1994. That's not it. It's about public health and safety. That's why we plan. That's what zoning is all about. That's why we have a planning commission. So the date of adoption of new standards is what we need to look at. So very long answer to a very brief and meaningful question. I'm sorry about that, Bill.
Well, 1994 was a long time ago,
It was a very long time
and
ago.
there's been improvements and everything since then.
Yep.
And there's no way that anyone could understand all the improvements that have been made and rule on that. So, Mr. Harper, are you asking us to table this? Is that what you're asking us to do?
I think you should continue the conversation.
That sounds like table to me.
Any other directors have any comments or questions to Mr. Harper?
If I could just finally say this, I appreciate your time. I know it took a lot of time last time, and I'm taking a lot of that time this time. The second question, or the second pertinent question, was about replacement units. in the parks and in the overlays, because the wording currently reads that you could replace a unit with a newer used unit, but if a site is vacant, or if a house is on that, a site-built house is on that property and it's torn down or razed, can a unit be placed there? The wording says replacement of an existing manufactured home, so that may need some polishing before you adopt it.
Or not, as the case may be, but.
We would ask that you polish it before you
Thank
adopt
you for
it.
that, yeah.
Yes. Should I say
Anything
it?
else directly to Mr. Harper? No? Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? I mean, our choices here are approve the amended proposed language, or delay making any ruling on it at all. I will say this, whatever the outcome is, my personal opinion, strictly my personal opinion, is that we should never use as a reason to do something or not do something what may or may not happen in the political arena. So on that one, I mean, my personal feeling is, and if I could influence any of you, please don't use that as a reason to make a decision on this one way or the other.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
In terms of your alternatives, I think you have two others. One would be to deny it and bring it back whole cloth at a future point, or to amend the current one. So you have the alternatives of approving, deferring it to a date specific, denying it, or amending it.
So in terms of amendment, I have two questions. One, if you maybe refresh me in a long discussions we've had through the past year, the recommendation says that the pending HUD standard would only be effective January of '27. That is 21 months after the supposed adoption, which we know it may. So were there other reasons besides just trying to allow a grace period in there, or delays or something?
It's a great question.
And in answering that, without making it too complicated, is in terms of amending, should we consider in the ordinance that saying that any new HUD, any revisions of the HUD standard, because they may not come in until every 20 or 30 years, would be adopted with a grace period of a year or so, or something like that. It would, again, recognizing that there's some legal questions about, specific dates and times and that sort of thing, but I would think we would be on safe ground, because we essentially are saying that here, we're not gonna apply this until 21 months. I'm not sure what the rationale for 21 months in this ordinance is, and if we shouldn't just make that kind of make the statement that new HUD will be adopted with, people given a grace period of, say, 1 year or year and 18 months, and then the new homes will come under the new standard.
Okay. Prior to COVID, we probably would have had an effective date that was much sooner, based on HUD's expected implementation of this code. But because of the long lead times in manufacturing now, including the manufacturing of homes, there may be homes that have been ordered already that won't be ready for another year. And so in fairness to those dealers in our area who might be selling homes to people who would like to live in Hot Springs, this will give them the opportunity to turn the newer units and be ready with ones that have been manufactured after the HUD date, the new HUD date that we're looking at. And that's pretty simple.
Pretty reasonable. So it may just be a question of do we want to just make that a standard 1 year, 2 years, or something like that in terms of our proposal?
I think that our city attorney would tell us that we need dates. And
Okay,
to have it something that just floats, although very convenient, might not be the most defensible.
all right. Well, I've had some historical experience with government regulations, used to be very much involved in that. I think Bart has some experience in that arena too, and we know, not as everybody says, but we know those things have a tendency to be delayed, which is to suggest that we would have to come back here again and make an amendment to what we approved,
If
right?
something changes and it looks like that's what you want to do, yes, that's the way it should be handled. So you know specifically what it is that we're trying to accomplish and then take it from there.
Kathy, if somebody has an existing mobile home park and they get rid of a unit and they replace it with a unit, is there a mechanism for the city to know about that?
What we permit is how it is attached to the ground and how the plumbing, electrical, those things, how those connections are made. And that's the same thing that we do with any home. So that part that's on the outside and the connection to the home, the city does look at that with regard to our existing codes for electrical and plumbing particularly, yes.
And that pertains to today's letter from the association about paragraph number 3 on the wording of the placing replacement homes on vacant lots and on where site where the homes have been. I would propose that we, if we approve the recommendation as it's stated in the recommendation, that certainly that would give some discretion for the city attorney to rework that, because it has to have board approval, and then something could be presented at that time to handle that issue. I don't think that's throwing a burden on the city or the board if we do that. So I'm not going, I just want to say, appreciate bringing that issue up, but I'm not concerned about that.
So is it Planning Commission's intention that the replacement section specify that manufactured homes lawfully placed on individual lots can be replaced? What it says now is homes, but is that something you would want to amend to say manufactured homes can be replaced with a manufactured home?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Well, I think if you left it like it is, it would be open for any type of home. So someone could move a mobile home there, or someone could buy the land and build a stick-built house, and that would leave it open for both of those, I would think.
Yes.
If we put mobile home in there, then it would restrict it to only a mobile home could be replaced. Correct?
I see what you're saying. I think the intention, based on our discussion over the last several months, is that we were talking about a manufactured house that somebody wanted to replace could be replaced with a manufactured house. I don't think at any point we were saying that a stick-built house could be replaced with a manufactured house, because the manufactured home is placed subsequent to either, in the early days, a planning commission approval of a conditional use to place the house on a specific individual lot. Then the zoning changed to say that we had the overlay areas. And right now, and we're proposing in the future also, that those overlay areas remain where they have been, and that somebody can place a manufactured home there. But the way this is written may not be specific enough. And I think that's what Mr. Harper has identified, is that we're saying manufactured home parks approved prior to the ordinance approval date and homes lawfully placed. It should say manufactured homes lawfully placed. And if that is your intention, an amendment would be in order.
So manufactured homes can only be placed in an approved overlay district. There is a wealth of lots available
There
in
is,
those areas
there is.
to put new or to replace any existing homes, and those are the only places they can be placed.
Yes.
And yet, I don't think makes sense to prohibit somebody from building a stick-built house in there. if that's
Oh,
what
no,
they
we're
want
not
to-
saying they
All right,
can't.
well, I thought that's where you were going with that.
No, no,
Okay.
no. I'm saying
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
inverse
All right,
of
we need to
that.
clarify that.
I'm saying if you have a stick-built house there now, and it was not, say you're on an individual lot, not in the manufactured home overlay area.
Right.
If your stick-built house, you decide you're tired of it, you can't replace that with a manufactured house unless you're in a manufactured home overlay, or that lot prior to the manufactured home overlay was approved by Planning Commission with a conditional use to put a manufactured house on that lot. So there's two places that lawfully a manufactured house can exist.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it's
So
confusing
conditional use
because
runs with the land, and
It does.
we can't really.
we can't really
really
undo
change
that.
So-
No,
So is that just a matter of clarification of the language?
it's clarifying the
Which is-
language.
All right, I misunderstood you. All right.
Yep. So that's on me. I wrote the language, so
Okay.
if it's goofy, I'm goofy.
Well, given the number of questions and potential ambiguities that may exist where we are now, my question to the commission is, y'all want to sit here and hash this out tonight, or, I mean, it seems to me that this is a discussion that needs to take place with some advice and so forth that we perhaps are not prepared to do this evening. I would ask your opinion on that, Director Selman.
I think there's plenty to talk about here. You can deny it, do your study, come up with what you want at that time. You can continue it to a specific date, which is going to be way the heck out there. Those would be your choices if you're not ready to act right now.
I don't think we're ready to act.
Sadly, I agree with you. I'm frustrated by that, but
There's no new HUD, I mean, there's no new HUD standard. The latest HUD standard present today is 1994.
Are there?
Proposed, not existing.
Yeah.
There's no existing replacement today for the 1994.
And I don't think
Yes
Mr.
and no,
Trump is
yes.
ready to rule on this either, so.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Rick's table.
do we have a motion then?
We need a date.
We gotta have,
You can't just stick it out there.
Table.
Would it be better to agree to amend instead of tabling and not, I just don't know if we had to come up with the amendment tonight or if we could just say, we would like to amend this. And then after that, then, have some consensus
Well,
of we need to amend this and then.
If we deny this, where does it go next?
If you deny it,
yeah,
we don't have to send it forward.
But it is a part of the discussion that we had committed to as a commission about looking at the issue of affordable homes
Yeah.
and how to address that in
Yeah.
some appropriate way in the city. So
We'd already said we were going to do that, so I
Right.
think that's
Mhm.
would
Yeah.
be good.
Do we
we've
just
made a
make this a
commitment
part
to
of
do
that?
Right.
Just combine, did we put a date on that, or we just said after the first of the year?
We said after
code
the first
forward?
of the year. This, as an agenda item, either needs to go to another date, I mean, which could be, I don't know, October 10th or something, or you can deny it and then deal with it clean when you're ready to finish up your recommendations on housing.
Which we were already planning to do.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So if we deny it, nothing changes.
right. Changes nothing.
Okay?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, now, if you vote to deny, it's good to have a reason, so.
We're going to have a motion on the floor too.
Uh,
Well, no, we have a motion to approve. the
No, we haven't
interview
had a-
discussion.
we haven't had a
we haven't
motion
quite
yet.
gotten
So
to that point
that's
yet.
it.
Right.
If everybody votes no, then that doesn't deny it. You're saying it takes a specific
It-
motion.
We need a motion to approve because that's what our bylaws call for.
All right. we
And
didn't
at
do
that point, then you vote no.
Oh, did we miss that in the, okay.
Yeah.
Procedural.
Yep. So you need a motion to approve.
Yes,
So move.
Second.
very good.
But
Miss-
the motion to approve, we're denying, by not approving, we're denying it.
If you don't want to approve it, you say no. Yeah.
Everybody clear on the
Ready.
impact of that? Okay, Ms. Sweet Dobbs, would you please call the roll on the motion to approve?
Yes, sir. Rick Ramick,
No.
Ashley Campbell,
No.
And the reason being is, we need more study on this.
No, also more time to develop this.
Panisa Sharma,
No, for the same reason.
Brian Gerke,
No, more time to study.
Garrett Collier,
No amendment pending.
Bill Lamond,
Nay. Time to review.
LaDonte Walker,
I will vote no. Same reason.
Bill Vowell,
Opposed, safety and health reasons.
and Bart Stafford.
Uh,
Spit it out.
Well, it's frustrating to spit it out, but I would not approve for the reasons given. But I would also just say that from my personal perspective, this just puts more weight on our agreement to do something with this topic. So no.
Okay. The motion fails, and we can move on.
Excellent. Let's go to the consent agenda. So the next matter of business is consent agenda. May I have a motion and a second
So moved.
to,
Second.
okay, wow, this is great. Okay, Director Selman, would you please present the consent agenda?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. We have item number 2, which is a miscellaneous request, number 24175. This is an application to install a freestanding monument sign in a residential zone district for the Pocket Theater at 170 Ravine Street. The recommendation, of course, is for approval with several conditions. I'll read those conditions into the record. All construction and construction activity is to be accomplished in strict accordance with the site and design plans and all approval conditions and with the minimum standards, codes, rules, regulations, and policies as may now or hereafter be required or enacted by the City of Hot Springs, the State of Arkansas, and/or the United States of America, including the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, whether or not submitted for staff review or Planning Commission approval. Number 2, the applicants shall obtain any and all necessary permits from the Hot Springs Planning and Development Department prior to commencing work. Number 3, the sign shall not be illuminated as per the submitted design. The sign, number 4, shall not obscure the view of pedestrians or oncoming vehicular traffic. And that completes the consent agenda.
Excellent. Ms. Sweet Dobbs, can we please take roll on the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. Bill Lamont,
Approve.
LaDonte Walker,
Approve.
Bill Vowell,
Approve.
Garrett Collier,
Approve.
Brian Gerke,
Approve.
Puniza Sharma,
Approve.
Ashley Campbell,
Approve.
Rick Ramick,
Approve.
and Bart Stafford.
Approve.
That was a good one.
Hey, I like that. I like those.
Okay, the
agenda
motion,
items.
motion to approve has passed, and this item is approved.
Okay, moving on to new business. I believe we have one item on that section, so Director Selman, would you?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse.
Oh, of course, yeah. So as soon as we can get Mr. Gerke out of the room, would you please introduce the next item?
Just keep an eye on Mr. Gerke. All right. Yes, number 3 is a rezone request, RZ 24-173 at approximately 2822 Malvern Avenue. A request to change zoning from R2 residential to C3 neighborhood commercial for approximately 1 acre of land.
Excellent. So we need a motion to approve, and that merely gets it on the floor for discussion. A motion and a second do not mean that you're necessarily in favor of an application. May I have a motion and a second to approve the item?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Director Selman, would you please present the staff report on this item?
Yes, thank you very much. The applicant is Mr. Denny Teeter, representing property owner Teeter Family Trust. And he is requesting a zone change from R2 Suburban Residential District zoning to C3 Office Neighborhood Commercial District zoning for property at approximately 2822 Malvern Avenue. The property is currently zoned R2, has a future land use map designation of residential low density. It's in Board of Directors District number 6. It's currently vacant and undeveloped, has 350 feet of street frontage along Malvern Avenue. It is close to Lakeside Public Schools and is approximately 3,200 feet from the Malvern Avenue MLK Expressway interchange. A large portion of the property is in the floodplain. 2822 Malvern Avenue is currently being used as Lakeside Preschool, and the preschool has a 20-foot wide easement across the subject property. The Arkansas Department of Transportation daily vehicle counts have ranged between 12,000 and 22,000 vehicle trips. Surrounding zoning, on the west is R4, south is R2, north is CTR, and east is C4 regional commercial. Nearby uses are public school, shopping center, preschool, wellness business, duplex residential homes, single-family residential homes. The C3 zone district is described in Hot Springs Code, section 16254A, as existing to allow limited commercial along with office development in proximity to residential areas. Further, the district exists to promote mixed-use developments that increase the use of non-vehicular traffic. They also serve as proper buffers between low-density residential and higher-density commercial uses. Building masses should be modest and in scale with residential development. Although primarily serving surrounding neighborhoods, C3 businesses must rely upon the migration of customers from outside the neighborhood boundaries. Access and traffic circulation are key issues in their location. The application addresses the required findings for a zone change and expands upon compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, and also looks at consistent with the objectives of the zoning code. And in this situation, the concept and description of the C3 zone district, as just described, appears to be consistent with this location, thereby making the request consistent with the objective of the zoning code. With regard to the zoning map amendment, the finding is that the applicant successfully demonstrates that the standards for favorable consideration have been met. Planning Commission is able to establish a basis for recommending to the Board of Directors that the proposed change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning and is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code. The recommendation is that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map by designating the subject property, C3, Office Neighborhood Commercial, because the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code, and also to amend the future land use plan map designating this property to neighborhood commercial. And that completes the staff report.
Excellent. So would the applicant please come forward and give us your name and address for the record? And
Hi, my name is Diana McDaniel Hampo, and I'm here as a representative for the Teeter family and Denny Teeter. He wanted me to apologize that he is not here tonight, but he is with his family, and that's where he needs to be. I can handle softball questions. Anything technical needs to go to John Rogers, our project engineer. So easy stuff, I got you. What we realized you guys don't know about Denny, while he does have car dealerships in Malvern and in Mena, he has actually lived here in Hot Springs for more than 20 years with his family, and his girls graduated from local schools. And he loves Hot Springs for the exact same reason we all do. And he would never do anything to hurt the city. A lot of people don't realize that. What he wouldn't tell you, because he's ridiculously humble, is Denny is an extraordinary citizen and member of any community he's part of. Last week, he gave $5,000 to the Malvern Elementary for school supplies. Last year, he sent more than 100 kids from Mountain Pine School, not even his, to Mid-America Science Museum. When a community needs help, he never pushes back. He just gets his checkbook out. Everything the city has laid out in front of him, all the requirements he has agreed to, he didn't grump about it. He just, okay, that's what we got to do. So he understands the reasoning for the regulations and the requests. Denny wants to help build something on Malvern Avenue that all of Hot Springs is proud of, and that the Malvern area is excited about. So something tasteful and delicious, and I hope you'll consider our request.
excellent. It doesn't look like there's anyone else signed up to speak. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay. So I guess the public portion of the meeting is now closed. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, not hearing any questions. Do I have a motion to approve with staff report findings and recommendation?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Sweet Dobbs, would you please call the roll on the motion to approve?
Yes, sir. Garrett Collier,
Approve.
Punisa Sharma,
Approve.
Ashley Campbell,
Approve.
Bill Lamond,
Approve.
LaDonte Walker,
Approve.
Bill Vowell,
Approve.
Rick Ramick,
Approve.
and Bart Stafford.
Approve.
Okay.
Excellent.
The item passes with a recommendation to the board to approve it. And the board will make the final decision, and that will be scheduled in this room at 6 p.m. on December 3rd. And someone will need to be present to represent the item. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So our next agenda item is the director's report.
Thank you. Well, we have some riveting information for you here. I wanted to update you on Code Forward. It goes to the board next week on the 19th. And just to tell you that in accordance with Arkansas Code Annotated Section 1456 422C, notice by first-class mail went to the boards of directors of all school districts, that would be Hot Springs and Lakeside, affected by the proposed plan, ordinance, or regulation to allow them to have a reasonable opportunity to submit comments, and no comments have been received. So I know you were probably up last night thinking, have we heard? No, we have not. So that is about it. And again, thank you for all the work that you've done. Your old business was rough going. I think you made the right choice. And that will give us an opportunity to put some hours in on looking at housing and what the options are there. And so congratulations. I think that's good.
Thank you for the blankets.
Yeah.
Do you like your blanket?
Blankets are great.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right.
That's
Very
it.
good.
That's all I've got.
Well, with no further business, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Does everyone approve?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are
No, they
adjourned.
want to stay longer.